I think one of the reasons that the movie doesn't work very well is that it's hard anymore to accept the Catholic Church will save you.
And I don't know for sure, but there has to be a parody porn, doesn't there? I mean, they parody every other name. I'm sure they've got their own Harry Hole mysteries, but that's another show.
I like vampires that kill people.
Right.
I dislike vampires who don't kill people unless you're bringing me a delicious chocolate cereal.
Well, we don't know if it's the most wonderful time of the year, but for us, it may be the most fun time of year, and that is the time for Skeletons in the Closet. We're back with the 2022 edition. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast, and she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And let's talk about, well, before we get into Skeletons in the Closet, talk about what that is for the uninitiated, and move on to this year's rundown. Let's talk about last time when we were live at Gateway Film Center. We were talking about zombies, a certain kind of zombie that I think some people were impressed that we found as many movies as we did to talk about.
Yes, because we showed the excellent Norwegian film Dead Snow.
Are you sure it's not German?
And we talked about Nazi zombies. And,
right.
it is a funny thing because, you could do we have done so many different podcasts on different types of zombies because there are so many zombie movies. But and we could also do a podcast on Nazis without the zombies because
right.
they're a fixture in horror as well.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of Nazi zombie movies.
And it was a lot of fun to see Dead Snow on the big screen. I think we probably had more people in this past audience that had seen the movie, maybe more than ever.
Right.
Usually when we say, how many people have seen this, we get a smattering of hands up, and we love it when there's next to none. There were quite a few this time, but that's all right. That just shows you they were jumping at the chance to see it on the big screen.
Yes, and that was really, especially because we had just had that bad winter storm.
Right.
And it just felt fun. It was fun to watch. And as we've said before, blood really pops on the snow.
It really does. And that's a fun one. As most fun as you can have with not only zombies, but Nazi zombies, that one is fun.
It is. It is a funny movie and carnage galore.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people enjoyed it. Most people did, I think. And Richard and Nathan Andrews specifically pointed out they were surprised that we could come up with 8 Nazi zombie movies to talk about.
Yeah.
But they underestimated you, and that's always a mistake.
The other thing, just a shout out to Pink Paradox. We haven't heard from her in a minute, and she appreciated the Norwegian call out.
And she gave it her thumbs up, right? Her stamp of approval.
She did.
Yeah, that's our Norwegian correspondent, Pink Paradox. So thank you for checking in. All right, that was last time, and we're going to be back at Gateway for next month's Fright Club Live. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But yeah, we mentioned this is the time of year that we dig into Skeletons in the Closet. I think this idea popped up years ago. Might have even been before Fright Club. I think we were writing for a non-existent website now, that's now non-existent when this came up. But why don't you explain what Skeletons in the Closet is?
Well, almost every really big actor at one point made a bad horror film. And so it's always fun. As soon as Oscar nominations come out, the first thing I think of as we're sitting there, remember when little Leo DiCaprio was fighting critters in Critters 3? So many.
Tom Hanks.
Oh, yeah. I mean.
Brad Pitt goes on and on.
Oh,
Clooney.
Cutting class. Clooney.
Yeah. There's a ton.
Clooney could have his own podcast of bad horror. So that's always just a fun thing that jumps to mind when they're calling out their names. And so we turned it into a podcast. Well, I think the very first year of this podcast. And we've done it every year since. Yeah,
and we love Oscar time anyway. So it's just another, because we have our other podcast of The Screening Room where we dig into, every week we spotlight the new movies coming out. So, of course, we talked about the overall nominations and our thoughts. But this time we're just going to zero in on some categories that have actors that started off in some bad horror movies. So we'll talk about those, their chances of winning in those categories, and also, of course, those bad horror movies. So it's fun. It's just a lot of fun to dig into this because it just shows you that things get better.
They do. They really do. And sometimes they go backwards because Elsie Fisher, a few years ago, people thought she might get nominated for an absolutely outstanding performance in the equally outstanding film, 8th Grade.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And her new movie we were going to spend a minute to talk about because, boy, that's a polarizing film right there.
Yeah, it seems a pretty appropriate time to talk about the new it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the actual title of this one. Released right to Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really been polarizing. And of course, horror is our genre here, so we might as well talk about it. Overall, I saw it first, and then it was one of those where I held off. Oh, I want to talk about it, and then you saw it a couple of days later, and that's great. Overall, we thought it was fine. There's a lot of hate out there for it. Then I also see a lot of people saying, I don't get all the hate, and we certainly didn't hate it. We had some issues with it, but overall, in the list of Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels, I think it ranks pretty high.
It's at least middle of the pack, and I think we talked about a couple things. One thing it had going against it is like Scream. The Scream reboot was so much fun. You know, the first time of the Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween, which is also called, of course, Halloween, was so much fun. So that set a pretty high bar for this. But the truth is, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a hard movie to make sequels to, and all of the sequels have been disappointing. Every single one has been disappointing to one degree or another.
Especially number 2.
And that happens a lot, I think, when you really love the original, and the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is my second favorite movie of all time.
Right, exactly, which is another reason I thought we should talk about it. But, I thought it looked good, which is sort of weird because you remember the first one, part of the appeal was how gritty and mean it looked. This one does not. This one looks good, but some of the shots are really nice.
Yeah, the cinematography is absolutely
and
stunning.
The framing. A couple of the shots, the way they're framed, very, very nice, I thought. It is very, very bloody and gory. So if that's your thing, jackpot, which is, again, sort of funny because the original, if you think about it, even if it terrified you, there's very little blood, if any.
Well, I mean, one of the problems that the films have had is just that, I think, is that people remember the original, and when it came out, it was as being one of the most terrifying, horrific, grisly movies that they had ever seen. And, of course, there is almost no blood in it, almost none. And so I think even in the Tobe Hooper's sequel, which you hate, all filmmakers seem to just abandon that in favor of a lot of blood, a lot of gore, a lot of entrails, a lot of, we never see him take a face off.
Right.
In the original movie. That's just what he's wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think
that
there's really something to be said for the amount of dread that Tobe Hooper created in the first one without showing you really much of anything.
Right. Exactly,
And that's harder to do than just showing entrails and blood and carnage. It's much harder to do.
Yeah, and legend has it the original was more restrained because Tobe Hooper was trying to avoid an R rating. So sometimes the great results are accidental, I guess. But looking at this one, the new one of the first problems that stood out was the setup. How they got into it with this town.
It was dumb as hell.
It was really dumb. So didn't buy that. Also, I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it yet. There's a subtext about gun violence that really intrigued me as what were they trying to say here? Now, I just read an interview with Fede Alvarez, who is credited with the story here. If you can seek that out, I think I saw it on a website called Collider, I believe. Gave a lot of helpful insight as to what they were thinking. I'm still not sure how well it came across.
Yeah.
But that was another problem. Love Elsie Fisher. Boy, she looked different, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
From 8th grade. She's growing up.
Yep.
She's growing up, and the different hair color really made her look different. But love her. But yeah, overall, I thought it was fine. Not great. It wasn't abysmal. Fine.
I don't want to spoil anything. I love the woman who played Sally Hardesty. I love that actress. I love her in everything.
From The Survivalist. Boy, if you haven't seen The Survivalist, look it up.
She's always great.
Yeah.
And I liked her in this role. I thought Sally Hardesty and this actress deserved better.
Agreed.
So, and we'll just leave it there. I don't want to dredge anything up or ruin it for anybody.
Right.
For me, it's fine. It's middle of the pack.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think anybody, including Hooper, has done justice to the original with a sequel because it's almost like they missed the point. He's not Jason, right? He's not Michael Myers. He's one of a whole family of degenerate, crazy cannibalistic murderers. And so it's just create.
Right. And this one, just so you know, this one ignores all the other sequels. It picks right up years later. It just acts like none of them ever happened. And if you haven't seen it yet, stick around to the very, very end of the credits. But actually, even before the end stinger, there are some nice callbacks to the original, including right out of the gate, the narrator again is John Larroquette. Very nice. But yeah, the first one is...
It's quick. It's a quick movie.
It is quick, and it's lean and it's mean. And actually, one of the social media threads I saw it on, I saw somebody included it on their list of... the original included it on their list of movies that should never be remade or messed with. And in that list was West Side Story. And you know what? We still say the new West Side Story is better. And we'll leave it at that.
Right. Just a quick note to that. I don't have a lot of fondness for the original, but
I do.
You love musicals.
Yeah.
You like West Side Story, and we both agree that the new one is better.
The new one is better. But so if you haven't, by all means, if you're a horror fan, you got to see the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre for sure and see what you think about it. But basically, middle of the pack of the sequels, maybe a little higher for me because I hate number 2 so much. But that's our thoughts on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All right, Skeletons in the Closet 2022. Brand new group of Oscar nominees with brand new histories in bad horror movies, so let's get at it. Let's start at number 5 with a film from 2011. A young doctor suspects she may not be alone in her new Brooklyn loft. She learns that her landlord has formed a frightening obsession with her. In a supporting role, it is this year's nominee Ingenue Ellis in The Resident.
The record feature is triggered by movement, so any activity in the apartment will be recorded. These babies will catch anything that moves.
I followed you one night.
You followed me home.
Now, Ingenue Ellis is nominated for Best Supporting Actress this year for King Richard. She is fantastic in that movie.
She really is.
Even in her limited screen time, because she really does it. It's Will Smith's show, let's be honest. But boy, she is fantastic in it. She's up against Jessie Buckley in The Lost Daughter, Ariana DeBose, speaking of West Side Story, Judi Dench in Belfast, and Kirsten Dunst, The Power of the Dog. What do we think of Ingenue Ellis's chances in this category?
I think that this is probably Kirsten Dunst's year. Partly because she has so much more screen time than anybody else on this list. I mean, you could have made a case that she's lead actress.
I think there's a lot of love for DuBose as well for West Side Story.
Yeah.
But but after that, I'd probably put Ellis maybe third.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think Judi Dench
and Jessie Buckley, I thought were surprises. Although, especially
they're both great.
They were both great. Yeah, they really were. But I think people were a little surprised by those 2 nominations. So I don't think anybody was surprised that Ellis got nominated.
No,
and
she was great.
She has, she's been banging around. Great supporting work mainly for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
We loved her in Lovecraft Country 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That one of the very rare TV shows that we watched, and we watched every episode.
But it's another case, and they bring this up a lot in sports, about how one player can make another player so much better. I think her performance, the girls that play Venus and Serena are also very good. But Ellis's performance specifically helps Will Smith so much that she almost should get like a half a nomination for his.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to be the scene that they show during the award ceremony, but the one in the kitchen. Where they're already famous and they've already got this all money, and she's just letting him have it, and about how he didn't do this on his own.
Right.
It's just a masterclass in acting.
Not only was that scene needed in that film, very much so, but she just kills it.
She kills it.
She kills it. So let's talk about this, The Resident. She doesn't have a very big part in it.
So Hilary Swank is the lead in this movie, and she's a doctor. She's an ER doctor. So whenever she's at work, and one time outside of work, we see Ellis's character, Sydney, who's another one of the doctors in the ER, who's real supportive of the lead character. Her name is Juliet, and wants her to move on from her cheating boyfriend. So Juliet has left her cheating boyfriend, and she moved into this much too good for her to be living their loft apartment.
I know, it's nice.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
There's a reason for it. And it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan who plays Max, and also Christopher Lee sighting.
Yes, this was Christopher Lee's first Hammer film. This is a Hammer film.
It is a Hammer film.
It was his first Hammer film since To the Devil a Daughter in '76. some 35 years earlier. Also, his final Hammer film, because he died in 2015. So it was a first in a long time and his final one. I think it's easy to miss that this is a Hammer film.
Yes. Well, I actually think a lot of the, modern Hammer films, it's gone under the radar.
Point,
I think the best one we've seen, The Lodge was a Hammer film, and so was Let Me In.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so, they've actually done some great work, but it's just, they're not Hammer, They're not the costume drama ribaldry that they used to be. But they're making great movies. This is not one of them.
And if you've seen a movie, it actually came out the same year, a Spanish movie, Mientras Duermes. Apparently the plot is almost identical to that Spanish movie. So I haven't heard of that one. Have you?
No, but the truth is this is a pretty common it's a guy in the walls plot. It's a pretty common plot, this is. And they don't do anything to update it or make you give a shit. It's just not very good. I spend the whole time wondering what in the hell two-time Oscar winner Hilary Swank is doing this movie, because keep in mind, it's 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why she would have taken this film. This is a long time ago. And Morgan is not certainly a two-time Oscar winner. However, he's too good for this movie, and he in particular just doesn't sell it. He doesn't do a particularly good job in this. But the writing is hackneyed. There's nothing about the movie that is interesting or new or fresh.
Field voyeurism theme, somebody's watching you, and a
lot of stupid choices are made.
Mm-hmm. But Ingenue Ellis is in it, and that's the point, because she's Oscar nominated this year,
right.
And she's better than this film as well.
She is.
Even though she's not in it very much, she qualifies as a skeleton in the closet, The Resident, from 2011. That's number 5. So let's move it up to number 4. This is also from 2011. This is also bad. American seminary student Michael Kovac travels to Italy to take an exorcism course. It's this year's Oscar nominee, Kieran Hines, in The Rite.
I haven't prayed in years. Last night I found myself praying for you.
It knows you. It knows all your sins. You do not speak to it. It's the devil.
I'm coming for you.
Your name! Give me your name! God help me! You can only defeat it when you believe in it.
Kieran has some to choose from. Let me tell you that. He's been in a lot of horror. He's been in a lot of movies. He's been in hundreds of
long
movies.
and mostly distinguished career. This one, not so much distinguished, but really the star here is Anthony Hopkins.
He is. And Kieran Hines, he's up against Troy Koster from Coda, Jesse Plemons from The Power of the Dog, J.K. Simmons from Being the Ricardos, and Cody Smith-McPhee from The Power of the Dog. Now, it's a tough race because the two Power of the Dogs, you feel like they're going to split the vote.
They could cancel each other out. I think J.K. Simmons, as great as he is, it was a surprise here.
Yeah, it was a surprise here.
Troy Kotsur from Coda, that is such a crowd-pleasing movie. I think there's a lot of a good feeling for him.
Yeah, and he was great in it.
He's great.
He really was a standout in that movie. I'm leaning toward him. If only one of the two Power of the Dog nominations had made it, I would say Jesse Plemons for sure, or Cody McPhee for sure. However, and I love both of them, and I love that movie, and I love their performances.
Yeah, and they both deserve a nomination. But
they could. But I think they're going to split the vote.
They could cancel each other out.
But I don't think Kieran Hines is.
I don't either. No. I don't either. But The Rite is a bad exorcism movie. It is based on a book which centers around a real-life priest, Father Gary Thomas. He was tasked by his bishop to become a diocesan exorcist and was sent to Rome to learn how to do it. So there's plenty of, you talk about well-worn tropes, the exorcism movie, this is one. And I remember when we watched it, it just devolved into silliness. Yeah,
it's one of those movies where every other movie, I think, really, that Anthony Hopkins is in, it's just him chewing up scenery, and so this, or
he does enough of those.
Dracula or The Wolfman. I mean, he does so many. He does,
and then something like The Father comes along, and you're like, oh my God,
right? Yeah,
reminds
absolutely.
you of how great he is.
And Kieran Hines just plays one of the. I think he's a cardinal. And he's teaching exorcism. One of the things that kills me about this movie is that the lead, played by Colin O'Donoghue, the priest, he doesn't believe in God. Right? He just went to the seminary to get a free education, and he's just going to not take his vows I don't know. I've never thought about going to the seminary. I'm not sure that works. And so basically, Toby Jones says you have to go and learn to be an exorcist, or we're going to charge you anyway when you renounce your vows. We're just going to not pay your bill, and then you're going to owe us for all of your college courses. So anyway, it's interesting because I thought, is that really a thing? But it's a way.
It's not like the GI Bill.
No,
really.
But it's a way to set up. He doesn't have any faith, and he needs to develop some faith, and so that's the arc of his character. I think one of the reasons that the movie doesn't work very well is that it's hard anymore to accept the Catholic Church will save you, right? Not a lot of people see that as the way horror should go. It's quite the opposite. But that's not what makes this a bad movie. It's a bad movie because it's not very well written. The direction is completely bland, and none of the performances, including Kieran Hines, are very good.
Right.
And Anthony Hopkins is just ham-eating Anthony Hopkins.
And it's not a movie in another way that will pass your Catholicism test, because Michael, the seminarian, at one point is performing an exorcism, and that would not be possible because you have to be an ordained priest with the explicit permission and authority of the bishop. So,
you know what? That's a little bit nitpicky in that I'm not that familiar with how the Catholic Church decides who can and cannot perform an exorcism. I've got to admit.
Neither was I. I looked it up.
They did not teach us that at St. Mary's.
There's so many of those. That's the thing, that there are so many of those exorcism horror movies that it is so easy to just become silly, that when you do see a great one, it's even more so appreciated. Of course, the classics like The Exorcist, you can go back and revisit and remember what made that one so great. But even when you see a newer one, it's the exception anymore. It really is.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah, but Kieran Hines has a supporting role in that one. He was not Oscar nominated, but this year for Belfast, which is a great movie, by the way, even though I would have put some other performances before his into this category. Belfast is well worth seeing.
But he was in The Woman in Black.
Oh, no.
It's great.
Yes.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was in The Eclipse, which is definitely slept on. It's more spooky and atmospheric than it is outright horror, but it's a good one, and it's sad, and he does a great job. He was in a couple of Tales from the Crypt TV episodes, as I recall.
Oh, yeah.
And, of course, he's in one of the all-time worst, Mary Riley.
So, number 4, The Right from 2011. So, let's get even more recent for our number 3, and boy, is this a bad movie. I don't care what category you're counting down. This movie sucks. Detective Harry Hole. Yes, Harry Hole investigates the disappearance of a woman whose scarf is found wrapped around an ominous-looking snowman. This is J.K. Simmons as a supporting role in The Snowman.
He's been watching us the whole time. Building snowmen, cutting things up into little pieces. He's taunting us. If we don't find him, this is never going to stop.
Another missing woman.
There's something we're not seeing.
What matters most is that we celebrate the way this has brought us together.
Anyone can see that he's trying to hide something.
You can't force the pieces to fit. You could have saved them.
No?
Gave you all the clues.
J.K. Simmons, as we just said, he's nominated also in the Best Supporting Actor category for Being the Ricardos. He is very, very good. He's always very, very good. Mm-hmm. Again, we thought this particular role was a bit of a surprise. We probably would have had a couple of other performances, most specifically Mike Feist from West Side Story, probably in there. But J.K. Simmons is a great actor, Oscar winner, well-deserved for Whiplash, but he's in for Being the Ricardos, and who is he up against? You have it there.
Troy Kotsur,
oh, we
Jesse
just talked
Plemons,
about it, yeah.
Kieran Hines, Cody Smith-McPhee.
Yeah.
We still think Troy Kotsur is probably the front runner.
Probably don't think J.K., although people love him overall.
Yes.
I just don't.
Ohio State fan.
Yeah, right, because he used to live here. I don't think he was born here, but he used to live here anyway. But, so don't think he's going to win. But this movie, he's one of the bright spots in a movie that is just, it's ridiculous. And for good reason. I mean, it was based on a best-selling book. Didn't read the book, but I'm sure it's better. The more we got into looking at this movie, it was even disowned by the director, Thomas Alfredson, just about a week or so before it came out, saying it didn't work as a film. There were so many problems. One of the biggest was, and I mean, we didn't know this before we saw the movie, but it so much makes total sense if you've seen it, because one of the biggest challenge for the editors was just using the footage that they had and stitching it together to create a barely coherent story, because some 15% of the script was never even filmed. That makes
sense.
total sense because the movie is nonsensical.
Yeah, which is really tough because it's a thriller mystery. You are piecing together a mystery, and you're like, who is this character? What's going on with these prescription drugs? I'm sorry, there's sex trafficking? It is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and
it's absolute nonsense.
It just feels like it was taken, the editing was done with a meat cleaver.
Yes.
But then when you find out, well, no, it wasn't their fault. They didn't have any footage to edit. Well, okay, that makes sense. It's ridiculous to even try to follow this plot. And it features not only J.K. Simmons, who's an Oscar winner, 2 Oscar nominees. Michael Fassbender, he's in the lead as Harry Hole.
Yeah.
And Chloe Sevigny is in this as well.
Yeah,
so you've got a great cast.
Thankless role, Chloe Sevigny.
And
It's also
Rebecca
James
Ferguson.
Darcy. Right. And Val Kilmer and Charlotte Gainsbourg, Toby Jones again. I mean, it's a lot of great actors with very little worthwhile to do.
And another demerit, Johnny Greenwood created a score for this movie that was never even used.
Oh, my God.
And Johnny Greenwood now has become one of the, not only with his work with Radiohead, but he's one of the most accomplished composers. I mean, he was Oscar nominated this year. I think he could have been Oscar nominated 3 times this year.
Definitely twice.
He's fantastic. But he did a score was not even used. So this movie is just ridiculous. But J.K. Simmons sporting a British accent, all right, we'll take that. And even so, even if you followed along, even if you read the book and knew what was happening, I mean, the finale of this is so limp.
It is.
I know. That's what we're going for.
Oh, I know.
It's bad. This is really a terrible, terrible movie.
I don't know if the book is any better, but this movie is it's a very misogynist in its depiction of women and its dispatch of women.
And almost impossible to follow, given that a lot of the script wasn't even filmed. That's amazing that they even cobbled together a film to put out.
However, if you never saw the movie, you can appreciate what they do with a snowman. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The rest of it, that's just... it probably makes it worse that they couldn't live up to that cool snowman idea.
Yeah, and apparently there's a whole series of Harry Hole mysteries.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why, obviously, they were stuck with that name.
And I don't know for sure, but there has to be a parody porn, doesn't there? I mean, they parody every other name. I'm sure they've got their own Harry Hole mysteries, but that's another show. Number 3, The Snowman, a terrible movie with a whole great cast, including this year's Oscar nominee J.K. Simmons on our Skeletons in the Closet 2022. So let's move it up to number 2, and this is a film from 2000. Alex Corvus returns to the world of the living to solve the murder of a young woman that he was wrongfully accused of. This is another nominee from The Power of the Dog, this time in Best Supporting Actress category. It's Kirsten Dunst in The Crow, Salvation.
Come on. The Crow legacy continues when a young man is wrongfully accused of murder.
Alexander Frederick Corvus, do you have any last words?
I love Lauren. I'm innocent.
Now, with the guidance of the Crow, he sets out to find the killer.
Where did you come from?
I'll make sure everyone knows that you're innocent, that you loved her.
Obviously, there's another direction we could have gone with Kirsten Dunst because we are not fans of the film Interview with the Vampire.
And she was so good in that.
She was awful good.
Little tiny vampire.
Yeah,
she was great.
Was
but
really,
that's
really
better
good.
than this.
Oh, it's so much better than this. This is the third. I think it's the third
Crow movie.
Crow movie. It never got theatrically released.
Actually, let me correct you.
Ooh.
One theater in Spokane, Washington, got it.
Wow.
And that prompted fans of the series to accuse Miramax of intentionally tanking it. But after that, and the poor test screenings, straight to video, except for that one theater in Spokane, Washington.
Okay. It's just dumb.
It is.
I mean, it's just dumb as hell. It's just dumb. In fact, I had to rely more on memory than usual. And now I saw it when it came out. I saw it again some years after. So it hasn't been 20 years since I've seen this movie, but it's essentially unavailable right now.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you own a copy, and we don't, it is something that you're not going to be able to watch. I don't know that you want to. she's not bad in it. She's kind of hamstrung because the character is so badly written. It's so badly written. There's also a lot of other really good people in this cast, including Walton Goggins, Fred Ward. There's a villain named Madden, so you think I'd be on board with that. But Alex Corvus, the Crow, he's just such an uninteresting sort of frat boy, sort of, you know what I mean? Like, he's the Crow.
Yeah, and the effects are bad.
They're
really
so bad.
Weak. Interestingly enough, Rob Zombie, we're big fans of filmmaker. He was set to write, direct, and supervise the music for the film. Left because of creative differences, but he's got a song still.
Yeah, they still use Living Dead Girl, which is the only good thing about the movie.
Yeah, so would it have been better with Zombie?
Couldn't have been worse.
Tough call. Couldn't have been worse. Also, you'll hear the Wilhelm scream, which I always appreciate, during the final battle when someone is thrown into the pit by werewolves. That's a good time for the Wilhelm scream, really. If you're thrown into a pit by werewolves, use it. And I just heard the Wilhelm scream in a TV commercial the other day, I swear, and I didn't catch what it was for. I'll have to keep my ears peeled for that. And also, this is the 6th film to receive a nomination in every eligible category at the Golden Raspberry Awards.
Wow.
I don't know how relevant the Razzies are anymore.
No.
We were just talking about that.
Actually,
because they nominated Ben Affleck this year, and he was very good.
It's funny, though, because I would not have expected this film to get that kind of attention, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they don't usually dig deep to movies that nobody saw because they didn't get distributed. It's and I'm not sure anybody expected it really to do that well. I'm not sure that the second Crow did very well. The first Crow, honestly, wasn't that popular on its release. It was more of a VHS.
Yeah.
Although it's great. I mean, it's a cult classic. But anyway, this movie just sucks. It just sucks. It's not fun. It's not scary. It's just so bland. There's nothing about it that stands out. And I was sad that she was in it.
Yeah. Maybe she was too. I don't know, depending on her payday. But we skipped her other nominees. And, of course, we already talked about this category because it's Ingenue Ellis, it's Judi Dench, Ariana DeBose, and Jessie Buckley. She's bringing that. The Power of the Dog has so much momentum as far as acting, although we think it's possible they may, cancel each other out, as we said, in the Best Supporting Actor category. But, she might take it because I think there's a lot of goodwill for her. She's been around, like we just said, since she was a little kid. Going through ups and downs in bad movies like the one we're talking about here. So I think maybe would our money be on her to win?
Right now, I'm leaning toward her.
Yeah, probably so. But definitely a skeleton in the closet for Kirsten Dunst in 2000, The Crow, Salvation, on our 2022 list. And that takes us up to number 1. You bet it's a bad movie, but this actress is nominated this year for a tremendous performance. But this movie is from 2012. Okay, so 10 years ago. After the birth of Renesmee, ding, 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 you know what it is now. The Cullens gather other vampire clans in order to protect the child from a false allegation that puts the family in front of the Volturi. This is Kristen Stewart, nominated this year for Spencer, but in 2012, it was Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2.
What is it, Alice?
The Volturi. They're coming for us.
If enough people knew the truth, maybe we could convince the Volturi to listen. My family's in danger. I need your help. We'll join you.
We will stand with you.
A lot of red eyes around here.
I'll never let anybody hurt you.
So Kristen Stewart could have her own whole Skeletons in the Closet top 5 list.
For these movies.
4 of them being these.
Yeah, and I know they have their cult of fans, and that's great. The people that love the books, they're bad movies. But she is, and this is just another indication, not only for Kristen Stewart, but Robert Pattinson, both of those stars. I give them both so much credit. They took that incredible fame, and then really Robert Pattinson first.
Yeah.
He started diverting right into small indie movies with great characters, and he delivered great performances.
Yeah, he absolutely did.
And now he's back with a blockbuster with the Batman, which we're going to see here in a couple of days. But Kristen Stewart took a little longer and to really get noticed, although she started racking up her own list of really good, smaller performances that nobody saw, so that still you'd hear her name and people would laugh, and we would have to point out, have you seen her lately? And so she's nominated for Spencer, and she's great in it. She didn't get a lot of early awards season love, and that started both of us thinking, wow, are they going to just pass her over? But I was glad to see she got a nomination here.
Oh, yeah, I know you were. And she really was great. She's up. It's a tough category. She's up against Jessica Chastain, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman, The Lost Daughter, Penelope Cruz, Parallel Mothers, and Nicole Kidman for being the Ricardos. Now, Colman and Kidman both have Oscars already. So does Cruz, actually. Jessica Chastain does not. She has been nominated more than once. She doesn't have any. And the thing is, I don't think any of these, it's hard to see any of these as a shoe-in. They're very few locks this year.
It is, because look at them. Not only Kristen Stewart playing, of course, Princess Di, but then Tammy Faye and Nicole Kidman is playing Lucille Ball. A lot of times playing a real person does well at the Oscars.
Yeah.
But you've got 3 in this category alone.
Yeah, you really do. I feel like Stewart has as good a shot as anybody.
She does. This is really tough. I mean, Olivia Colman, who pretty much is, every time she makes a movie, she gets nominated because she's that good.
Yeah, really
and she's just an incredibly good in The Lost Daughter. I don't think she was going to win because she won so recently. But if she did, it'd be well-deserved. She's fantastic in that movie.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. This is a really hard one to handicap. I think maybe if you pushed me right now, I'd probably say Chastain.
Yes, me too.
Even though that came out really early, I think, in the year, which sometimes can hurt. But sometimes you twist yourself in knots trying to think of trends about how these people win these awards. But that's a tough one. But the point is, Kristen Stewart is the nomination is well-deserved. If you haven't seen Spencer, she is fantastic in it. But Twilight, the entire series is bad. I go back to the the core thing that makes these stories bad is because it's all based on a premise that her character is so special. And her character in every film, I didn't read the books, is so boring that it just feels like it's built on a lie.
It's built on the idea that you should not have sex until you're married. And it absolutely encourages the opposite because the whole movie is just about sexual hysteria.
Yeah,
and
very Splendor in the Grass.
Yes, and it's alarming the degree to which they amp up the sexual tension and metaphor, and it's badly done.
Yeah.
And vampires sparkle, and they have vegetarian vampires. You're not a vegetarian. You're just not eating people. You're still... It's just dumb. Everything, and I know that I am the opposite of the audience that this material is intended for because I like vampires that kill people.
Right.
I dislike vampires who don't kill people unless you're bringing me a delicious chocolate cereal. I hate these movies, and it was tough for me to decide which one to go with.
Well,
and then you reminded me right away with the one with the creepy baby. I'm like, oh, that's right.
Because Not only how creepy that baby looked before they had an actual, young actress start playing the role because the character grows so quickly in this movie, but the fact that they pretty much give her away to shirtless werewolf boy at the moment she's practically born because, they imprinted. What?
Oh, I know. That's the thing. That's the thing. I think one of the reasons, aside from the fact that I like vampires who kill people, that I hate this series, and I hate it, is because every underlying theme is so profoundly sexist, and it's pretending it's not to be because the source material where it was written by a woman and it was written for her daughters. She has got some problems. Ladies, empower yourselves. Don't just let your parents hand you off to the shirtless werewolf so that you can marry him later because he's imprinted on you and surely he'll take good care of you. Take care of your damn self. Oh, my God, I hate these books. And I read the first one. And it's funny, my friend lent it to me because I asked because they were so popular, and she said no. Because she knew I would make fun of her. So I had to just go buy a paperback. Oh, she was right.
I remember.
I remember
when you were reading it and you were not too far into it. You're like, oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously it's not our bag. I haven't read any of the books, but I think I've seen all the movies, and they're bad. And this one gets the nod because of the baby.
Yep.
Breaking Dawn Part 2, the Twilight series. That is number 1 on our Skeletons in the Closet. But boy, all these performers... well worth their nominations this year. Good luck to all of them because they're fantastic work, all the nominees this year. But earlier in their careers, they had some bad horror movies, and we love that because that fills up our list in Skeletons in the Closet, and that's why it's our most fun time of the year. So we talked about Fright Club Live. We're going to be back in front of the crowd at Gateway, and I think we do. We've had trouble knowing in advance what we're going to show, but we know.
Oh, we absolutely do. It is going to be the folk horror film November.
Nice.
Black and white, absolutely gorgeous. Dieter Laser. It has a quick sort of drive-by in the documentary that we loved so much about folk horror.
Yeah, the Woodlands Dark and Days Bewitched, which is great. And you've probably heard us mention several times how much we love folk horror. And if you are like-minded, look up that documentary because you will love it. And that's a case where 3 hours goes by like that. You would not have known it was a 3-hour documentary.
No. Plus, then you feel like you've taken a class.
Yeah.
It's glorious. It's a glorious movie, and it inspired us to look into some of the folk horror that they don't really capitalize on because they spend a lot of time but there are hundreds and hundreds of really great folk horror movies. So we are going to talk about folk horror. We're going to show this absolutely beautiful black and white, gorgeous, hypnotic film
called November, and it's going to be in March, Wednesday, March 9th. So if you're in the area, we would love to see you at Gateway Film Center. As always, you can always catch up on the latest details about that or anything. Follow us on our socials. Fright Club Pod is the Twitter account, and also I didn't even mention Fright Club Pod. I'm getting bad at that.
You are.
Fright Club Podcast group on Facebook. It's where we get into a lot of these conversations, saw about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and more. And there's funny stuff in there, too.
Yep.
So we'd love to have you. If you'd like to join, just send in a request, and we'll approve it.
Toot sweet.
Toot sweet. That's a good one. So that's the Fright Club account. Also, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. It is Mad Wolf Columbus, and the main website where you can find all of our written movie reviews, our other podcast as well, our weekly podcast called Screening Room that we mentioned earlier. That's all right there for you at madwolf.com. So what do you think this year's crop of skeletons in the closet? What do we miss? Or maybe what do you think doesn't deserve to be on there? Let us know. You can always keep that conversation going on Twitter. That's the easiest, at Fright Club Pod. So we look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you can make it, look forward to seeing you next month for Fright Club Live. And until then, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Hello, darling. This is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And stay frightful, my friends.